In this video, we discuss Social Security wage indexing versus the cost of living adjustment and which one makes your payment bigger. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
There's a lot of confusion about how the SSA protects you, the recipient, from inflation. This is because the Social Security Administration uses two different methods to protect you from inflation. One they use during your working years and one they use during your retirement years. The one that they use for most of your working life is called the average wage index, and the other is the cost of living adjustment, which kicks in at age 62, regardless of whether you're taking Social Security or not. As you'll see in a moment, they aren't even approximately the same. You get a vastly different outcome with one versus the other. First, here's what happens with wage indexing during your working years. While you're working, you have a certain income in a given year. This money is paid to you with the current value of the money at that time, meaning that your employer won't pay you 2022 or 2024 income in 1985 simply because you think you're going to retire in 2022 or 2024. They're going to give you $1985, of course. But if the Social Security Administration took your historical earnings and didn't do anything with it, meaning bring it forward into today's dollars, your Social Security payment would be very small. It also wouldn't reflect the growth in the job market or alternative investment options besides the Social Security Trust. So the SSA brings all of your historical earnings into today's dollars up to your earnings at age 59. At age 60 and 61, they don't bring it into today's dollars, they just use a multiple of 1 times. In order to adjust your previous income into the current year equivalent, the SSA uses the National Wage Index. This index is based on wage inflation, which seems appropriate when bringing your earnings into today's dollars to calculate your Social Security payment. To give you the order of magnitude we're talking about here, in 1985, the National Wage Index was 16,823, at December 1985 anyway. In December of 2021, the index was 60,575. That's 3.6 times larger. If you earn $10,000 in 1985, that would be equivalent to $36,000 in 2021. The closer your historical earnings are to current day, the lower the multiplier. For example, in 2021, your December 2019 earnings would be multiplied by a factor of 1.12. When you reach age 60 and 61, the SSA gives you a multiplier of 1. Once you turn age 62, you qualify to draw Social Security. Whether or not you choose to draw Social Security is a different story, but at that time, the SSA switches your multiplier to COLA, the cost of living adjustment. If at age 62 you decide to wait and not collect Social Security, your payment goes up between 7 and 8% per year, all the way up to age 70. This is on top of the COLA adjustment that you also get. While wage inflation references the change in the job market over time, the cost of living adjustment, COLA, references the changes in cost over time. This is a big distinction. Now, we know that the wage index went up 3.6 times from 1985 to 2021. Let's do the same exercise for the cost of living adjustment. COLA, by the way, is simply the consumer price index. Technically, it's CPI-W instead of CPI, but they are approximately the same. Let's go back to December 1985 again. In December 1985, CPI-W was 108.6. In December 2021, it was 237.925. This means if you had started drawing Social Security in 1985, and that was $10,000 per year, in 2021, December of 2021, to be specific, your payment would have gone up 2.19 times. You'd receive $21,900. This is an approximation because the SSA doesn't use the CPI at December of any year. They use the average of the third quarter of the year and take that and look at that average compared to historical third quarter averages. But when we're talking about 1985 to 2021, the difference is insignificant. Now, if we just left it there, the average wage index would easily outperform the cost of living adjustment. 3.6 times is 64% higher than 2.19 times. So the winner would be the average wage index, and it still might be. But the SSA doesn't just take your previous earnings, adjust them into today's dollars, and give them to you. Number one, they're going to convert them to a monthly number, and number two, they're going to run that number through a model to determine what your Social Security payment is actually going to be. The first thing that they do is they take your best 35 years of earnings, use the average wage index, and bring those into today's dollars. Then they take that and divide it by 35 to get your annual number. They divide that by 12 to get a monthly number, and this is called your average indexed monthly earnings, AIME. If you are a high income earner, this number looks great to you, particularly if you are a high income earner and you have been for most of the last 35 years. But the SSA does one more thing to bring the payment down, and this really affects the high income earners. They haircut your average indexed monthly earnings by using breakpoints, and the SSA calls the breakpoints bend points. I'm not sure why they didn't just call them breakpoints. It would have been easier to understand. Perhaps they did it for branding or something. I'm not sure. Here's how the breakpoints, bend points work in 2023. The SSA will take your first $1,115 of AIME and multiply that times 0.9. They'll take your next $5,606 and multiply that times 0.32, and they'll take anything above that and multiply it times 0.15. So if your average index monthly earnings was $10,000, that's a high number, but let's just use that, then your Social Security payment at full retirement age would be $3,290. So you get about 33% of your AIME. The person whose AIME was $1,115 or less would get about 90%. On the flip side, the cost of living adjustment doesn't have a haircut. It's the same whether you have a small payment, medium payment, or large payment, at least by Social Security standards. What this means is if you're a modest income earner, you would favor the average wage index. If you're a high income earner, then you would favor the cost of living adjustment. If you like this video and you want to see more of me, please make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post about twice a week. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.